our security was really just that nobody's ever tried. It was just the fact that nobody ever tried to do anything because, like most religious institutions, we have an open door.
President Trump has also weighed in. He said the mass shooting has little to do with guns, suggesting that he should stiffen the death penalty laws instead. He also talked about anti-Semitism at a future farmers event in Indiana.
Our nation and the world are shocked and stunned by the grief. This was an anti-Semitic act. You wouldn't think this would be possible in this day and age, but we just don't seem to learn from the past.
CBS News radio correspondent Bill Rakoff is on the phone and joins us now. Bill, what can you tell us?
So the press conference was rather thorough in that we found out that the suspect, Robert Bowers, 48 years old, from the South Hills of Pittsburgh, just outside the city limits, is accused of walking into the Tree of Life synagogue just before 10 this morning. What really stood out to me was the response time, Rena, of the first responders. The fact that Pittsburgh police got the call about a minute after he was supposed to have walked into the synagogue. Once the officers had the call, they were there on the scene within a minute. They engaged him. 2 Pittsburgh police officers were shot. And then later, as the SWAT team was moving in on him, 2 more SWAT officers were also shot, all of them believed to be stable. But from the head of the FBI to the U.S. attorney to the Pittsburgh police chief himself, they're saying, look, if it hadn't been for that quick response, things could have been much, much worse inside the synagogue today.
Do we know if this suspect is talking, Bill?
We do not know. That pointed question was asked of the U.S. attorney, Scott Brady, and he said he would not comment one way or the other. He would say that Bowers had been shot. They believed he was shot by a police officer, but didn't have 100% confirmation. He was taken to a local trauma center where he was described in fair condition. So one surmises that he would be able to talk to investigators. But again, the U.S. attorney would not tell us one way or the other if he is. I don't think they want to let anything out of the bag this early on in the investigation.
I understand that, Bill. And what about the weapons that were used? What do we know?
So I asked that question, and we were told that he took an assault weapon, an assault rifle, along with 3 handguns. But when I pressed to say, did he use all 4 of the handguns, they weren't willing to tell us, whether or not, all 4 of them were used, just one of them. So we don't even know at this point, if he used the assault rifle or not, although there are a number of reports that describe him using it inside the synagogue. So he was very well armed. Which suggests that perhaps he probably had planned this out for quite some time. As we've been noting all afternoon, Rena, he had quite the social media presence there, but officials would not comment on that yet, saying it's just too early in the investigation. But he did say they would work day and night, and the U.S. attorney promised that justice for Bowers would be, in his words, swift and severe.
Swift and severe. We know this area, Squirrel Hill, is a huge sanctuary for the Jewish community in the Pittsburgh area. What's the mood on the ground there, Bill? And are they concerned? Should other synagogues be worried?
We did ask that question. Authorities were quick to say they didn't think that there was any, direct threat from what happened today anywhere else. But Pittsburgh officers, as well as officers around the country, out of what they call the abundance of caution, are increasing police presence around houses of worship, and not just Jewish houses of worship, but others as well. Here in Pittsburgh, people were told to go out and go do their thing. In fact, I'm sitting here in the neighborhood just a couple of blocks away, and people are walking the streets, even in the rain, walking their dogs. But it is a somber mood here in this very, very tight-knit community.
Yeah, we just incredible, the community, and we are hearing that there will be a 6:30 vigil there tonight. Bill Rakoff, I want to thank you very much for joining us, Bill.
Thanks, Rena.
You bet. Well, the shooting that left at least 11 people dead at a Pittsburgh synagogue is now being investigated as a hate crime. A law enforcement source said that the gunman reportedly shouted anti-Semitic slurs as he was shooting. If you look at his online activity, he posted anti-Semitic threats and conspiracy theories just in the weeks before Saturday's shooting. One of his target was HIAS. It's a nonprofit organization that provides humanitarian aid and assistance to refugees. Mark Hetfield, the group CEO, joins me now by phone. Mark, tell us a little bit about your organization and what you believe his rhetoric towards this organization was.
Sure. Thanks, Rena. So HIAS is the oldest refugee organization in the world. We were started at the end of the 19th century to welcome Jewish refugees to the United States. And we've since transformed into being an organization that helps all refugees of all faiths and ethnicities on behalf of the American Jewish community. We say that we used to welcome refugees because they were Jewish, and today we welcome refugees because we are Jewish. And so we do this in partnership with the U.S. government and with local community agencies around the country, including Jewish Family and Community Services in Pittsburgh, which is one of our partners. We also help refugees overseas and try to keep them safe where they are.
Mark, when you heard that your organization was mentioned by this suspect, what went through your mind?
I mean, I'm still in a state of shock, and I'm having a really difficult time coming to terms with it, and I can't stop thinking about what these people in the synagogue in the Tree of Life must have experienced when he invaded them, and his hatred toward HIAS and toward Jews and toward refugees. I mean, what we see is that hateful people don't tend to hate just one group. They tend to hate many. And this one decided he hated Jews, he hated refugees, and God knows who else he hated. And there's just too much space now in our society for hate speech and for haters.
Yeah, Mark, I want to ask you, has your organization, has HIAS, received any other threats? Was this a surprise when you heard about this?
Well, we've certainly had our detractors for quite some time who don't believe in our mission of welcoming refugees to this country, but obviously nothing at this scale before.
We heard from the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL, today saying that this is likely the deadliest attack on Jews in this country, in U.S. history. It comes at a time when hate crimes are on the rise nationally for the last few years. Have you been gaining that sense that hate crimes, do you see an uptick in that? Do you feel it within your organization?
Well, I mean, the sad thing is our mission is to protect refugees, and refugees, by definition, are people who flee hate. I mean, that's why they come here, is to find safety and sanctuary from hate. And certainly, we're seeing an uptick in this worldwide. There are more refugees and displaced persons in the world now than ever before because of this surge in hate. And in this country, we're seeing a surge in hate speech and a tolerance of hateful speech. And that's what bothers me the most, is that this person was on social media attacking Jews, attacking refugees, attacking HIAS, and he got away with it, and it led to this.
I want to send our apologies to you and your organization. What an incredible day it has been for this country, where people just gathered. 11 people killed, simply trying to express and practice their faith in this country. Mark, before I let you... We want to take you to Pittsburgh now. Officials there are holding a news conference to update their investigation into Saturday's massacre at a synagogue. Let's watch.
We want to offer our most heartfelt condolences and prayers to the victims of yesterday's senseless acts of hatred and violence, to the families and friends, and to Pittsburgh's Jewish community, and to the larger community of Pittsburgh. The Jewish community of Pittsburgh is one that we as Pittsburghers treasure. It's an important part of the cultural and social identity of Pittsburgh. And so this was an attack upon our neighbors and upon our friends, and one that we felt very deeply. The fact that this attack took place during a worship service makes it even more heinous. A place of worship is a sacred place. It's a place of peace and a place of grace. It's a place where a community comes together to celebrate that they hold most dear and most sacred. And this, of course, is our first freedom as a people. So today, all over Pennsylvania, men and women in similar places of worship are in prayer for our Jewish brothers and sisters. So today we stand together as a community that rejects hatred and violence, a community where neighbors respect neighbors, where we embrace our religious diversity and we celebrate our differences. And together we mourn those whose lives were lost, and we begin the healing process. I want to commend the courageous police officers and SWAT teams who responded to the scene. They are truly heroes who, without hesitation, without concern for their own safety, ran toward gunfire to protect innocent victims. By confronting and neutralizing Bowers, they prevented additional loss of life. So, a word about the charges. Last night, my office filed federal charges against the defendant, Robert Bowers. The complaint alleges that on Saturday, October 27th, at approximately 9:50 a.m., Robert Bowers entered the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh's Squirrel Hill neighborhood. At that time, members of the Tree of Life Synagogue were engaged in religious services and worship. Bowers was armed with multiple weapons. He had 3 Glock 357 handguns and an AR-15 assault rifle. Inside the synagogue, Bowers shot and killed 11 individuals and wounded 2 others. Police officers and SWAT teams responded quickly to the scene, and Bowers shot at them. Ultimately, 4 police officers were injured, and 3 of them were shot by Bowers. During the course of his deadly assault on the people of the synagogue, Bowers made statements regarding genocide and his desire to kill Jewish people. After a standoff with police, Bowers eventually surrendered and remains in federal custody today. So our complaint charges Bowers with 29 separate federal crimes. There are 11 counts of murdering victims who are exercising their religious beliefs. There are 11 counts of using a firearm to commit murder, and each of these counts is punishable by death. The final 7 counts are based upon the harm inflicted by Bowers upon the brave police officers who, in trying to stop Bowers' rampage, put their own lives in danger. 3 of these brave men were shot by Bowers. So Bowers is scheduled to make his initial appearance before a federal magistrate judge on Monday, October 29th at 1:30 p.m. So moving forward, the investigation is underway and our work will continue. Know that we will spare no effort or resource in ensuring that the defendant is held fully accountable for his unspeakable and hateful crimes. We would ask the public and the media to have patience with us as we conduct this investigation and understand that there are things that we cannot share at times during the course of the investigation. At the conclusion of our remarks, we'll be happy to take questions. Now you'll hear from Special Agent in charge of the Pittsburgh Field Bureau, Robert Jones.
Thank you, Scott. Last night at approximately 9 p.m., Robert Bowers was formally taken into federal custody following the issuance of an arrest warrant by a federal magistrate judge here in the Western District of Pennsylvania. He is presently still in the hospital following surgery and under guard. At this point, we have nothing to indicate that Bowers had accomplices, but again, we are in the early stages of this investigation. Our hearts continue to go out to the families of the victims of the Jewish community here in Pittsburgh last evening after some difficult work by the medical examiner's office. All 11 victims were positively identified and next of kin notification took place. As of 6 a.m. this morning, all of the victims had been taken from the Education Center to the medical examiner's office. I want to personally thank the leadership of the Jewish Community Center and the rabbis of the 3 congregations located at the facility for their patience and the patience of the families as we work through the night to identify and remove the victims this morning. This is a large, complex crime scene, and much work remains to be done. At present, FBI evidence teams from Baltimore, Washington, and Newark are here to augment Pittsburgh, and we estimate that the crime scene may take up to a week to process. As reported already, we've conducted a search at the subject's house in Baldwin, and a search of his vehicle will take place this morning. I can't comment on what was found in those searches. We continue to conduct interviews, scrub social media, review possible surveillance camera video, and exploit digital media to determine how and why Bowers committed this terrible act. I ask again that if you have information that may help, please contact law enforcement. I'd like again to thank Chief Schubert of the Pittsburgh Police for the heroic actions of his officers. Had Bowers made it out of that facility, there is a strong possibility that additional violence would have occurred. I also want to thank Wendell Hisrick and his team. They are a big part of the community that all law enforcement promises to protect and serve. Thank Thank you very much. I'll turn it over to Wendell.
Good morning. I would just like to take a few minutes and thank the outpouring of support that we've received over the last 24 hours. The Jewish Community Center, the Red Cross, the Salvation Army, the various grief counselors, the Children's Institute, and the many other organizations and businesses that have provided food and logistics for the officers and for the victims. As Mr. Jones mentioned, the area around Wilkins and Shady will remain closed so that the forensic investigation of the crime scene can continue. That area will probably remain closed for up to a week. Extra patrols have been assigned around various sensitive locations throughout the city of Pittsburgh, to include where the scheduled event will occur tonight. In the next few minutes, the medical examiner will release the names of the deceased victims. I would personally ask that the media respect the privacy of the families of these victims. I was there last night and witnessed the notifications being made to the families. It is a very difficult time for the families, and I ask you to give them some distance. Finally, if you see a first responder, whether it be a police officer, paramedic, or firefighter, go up to them and say thank you for their work that they've done. The last 24 hours has been extremely stressful for them, and a word of thanks would go a long way. At this time, I turn it over to Pittsburgh Bureau of Police Chief Scott Schubert, who will give you an update on his officers. Thank you.
Good morning. First and foremost, as everybody's saying, our heartfelt condolences to the victims and to their families and their friends. And we have a strong relationship with the Jewish community in Pittsburgh, and I just want to tell them that we grieve with you, we support you, and we're here for you, and we will continue to work with you. This is a tragic thing for everybody, but it's something that makes Pittsburgh strong, is that we work together, so we're going to continue to do that. I still want to praise the officers for what they did. I mean, they ran into danger, they ran into gunfire to help others. Some of that's training, some of that's experience, but it's their inner core that wants them to help others, that wants to save lives, and they did that yesterday. So we want to praise them for that. The 4 officers that were injured, 1 was released yesterday. We're praying 1 will be released today, and then the other 2 have a little bit more that needs to be done. And can't say enough for the medical staff at the hospitals for what they're doing for the officers. We have incredible hospitals in Pittsburgh, and they're doing a fantastic job with that. Can't say enough for the interagency and interagency support. Western Pennsylvania is blessed to have so many law enforcement agencies that work together, that train together. And yesterday just showed how that works. City, county, state, federal agencies working together, no egos, working together for what's right. And I can't thank them enough for that. And just, we're going to get through this, and we're going to continue on and show what Pittsburgh's made of. So thank you.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Carl Williams. I'm the medical examiner, chief medical examiner of Allegheny County. And again, I want to reiterate what everybody said so far, which is we, in my office, extend our deepest sympathies and condolences to the families. I met with them last night during the process of identification, and there's no words to express the sympathy that they need. Yesterday evening at the synagogue, we entered the synagogue and identified all 11 victims before they were removed and brought from the synagogue last night to my office. We've been involved with 4 rabbis from the synagogue and elsewhere. They can have a continued presence at my office during the process. I'm going to give you the names of the victims now, and these will be available to you afterwards. 75-year-old Joyce Feinberg of Oakland, 65-year-old Richard Gottfried of Ross Township, 97-year-old Rose Mallinger of Squirrel Hill, 66-year-old Jerry Rabinowitz of Edgewood, 59-year-old Cecil Rosenthal of Squirrel Hill, 54-year-old David Rosenthal. David and Cecil Rosenthal were brothers. 84-year-old Bernice Simon of Wilkinsburg. 86-year-old Sylvan Simon of Wilkinsburg. Bernice and Sylvan were husband and wife. 71-year-old Daniel Stein of Squirrel Hill. 88-year-old Melvin Wax of Squirrel Hill. And 69-year-old Irving Youngner of Mount Washington. The bodies are currently at the medical examiner's office. Autopsies have begun on those. We are doing everything in our power to complete the process in a way that honors both civil and religious law, and cause and manner will be released to the media as they're determined. We have not established a time framework for this. We're only in the initial process of evaluating what will be required to do that. And finally, in talking with the families last night, they are in shock and grieving, as you can imagine. My colleagues and I joined the authorities in asking for you please to be respectful of the needs for the time and space as they deal with this tragedy. Today and the coming weeks, they will need to know that Pittsburgh supports them and is lifting them up. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jeff Finkelstein. I'm the president and CEO of the Jewish Federation of Greater Pittsburgh. So I have to begin by saying that I've seen this room a lot of times on TV, and I never thought I'd be at this podium. This is an awful, awful period for our Jewish community, and especially for the families who've been affected. And it's real once you hear the names. We're going to do everything we can to help the families. We're in the process of doing that now. And we'll be there for them and be there to help our Jewish community in the Pittsburgh region heal from this. I want to echo a lot of the thanks and gratitude that people have already expressed to local law enforcement, to the FBI, to the DHS, the Salvation Army, the Red Cross, who've all been there with us yesterday at the JCC. I want to thank my colleagues at the Jewish Community Center and Jewish Family and Children's Service especially for really stepping in to work with the families. And you know, we will definitely we'll get past this and be a strong Jewish community like we've always been. Thank you. I'm going to ask the mayor to come up now.
Thanks, Joe. Pittsburgh's a strong town. We are a resilient city. We have been knocked down, and we've found ways to stand back up. And we've always done it in one way, by working together. To the victims' families, to the victims' friends, we're here as a community of one for you. We will be here to help you through this horrific episode. We'll get through this darkest day of Pittsburgh's history by working together. Squirrel Hill is the most diverse neighborhood in all of Western Pennsylvania. People choose to live there because of the diversity of the community. The Jewish community is the backbone. It is part of the fabric of Pittsburgh, and we will be there in all communities to support our friends in the Jewish community. We, as I stated, have been knocked down before, but we've always been able to stand back up because we work together. And I have to take a moment to thank those that spoke earlier. The effort that was put in across multi-jurisdictions, from the federal to the state to the county to the local was something that we should all be proud of. The fact that we were able to work together as one community, suburban medics coming in voluntarily to take on different areas of our city because all of our medics were at the scene. Our medics deciding on their day off to voluntarily come in to fill 7 additional ambulances to back up our officers and the officers who came from surrounding counties. The federal agents and the state troopers and the county officers all working together in order to be able to make sure an episode that will forever go down in the history of this city as one of the worst moments that we have experienced was able to be lessened because of that coordination. And to those that are standing behind me who spoke earlier, the professionalism that was exemplified through their leadership was something that we needed at our darkest time. To our officers who are in the hospital, and to the one officer who has been discharged, the thanks of an entire city go to them. Their sacrifice and their knowing of the danger that they put themselves in order to be able to protect others is something when they put on that uniform that we should understand the sacrifice that they make. And to their family members, this city will be behind and there to support you in anything that you may need. And finally, to those that are not familiar with Pittsburgh, to those who have given their words of not only confidence but support to Pittsburgh from around the world, around this nation, and around this state, thank you. We know that we as a society are better than this. We know that hatred will never win out, that those that try to divide us because of the way that we pray or where our families are from around the world will lose. And in Pittsburgh, we're pragmatic and we find solutions to problems. We will not try to rationalize irrational behavior. We will not try to figure out ways in order to lessen the degree of crimes such as this. We will work to eradicate it. We will work to eradicate it from our city, from our nation, and our world. Hatred will not have a place anywhere, and we will work locally to make those changes happen, and we will work with partners around this country and around this world to make sure that it ends. I want to thank again all of those in this room, the elected officials who are gathered, those that have worked on the front line of public safety, those that worked within public works and other parts of government in order to be able to assure the safety of our people. And we'll open it up to questions at this time.
Yes. Officer injured. 3 were injured by the suspect.
I think it's just either flying glass or a bullet fragment that ricocheted off something.
Is there any indication that the alleged shooter had paced out the synagogue or had any familiarity with it before Saturday?
We don't have any information on that at this point.
Was the weapon used in the shooting the AR-15?
No, that all the weapons he brought into the facility with him were used.
Scott, a lot of people have asked if this is a case of domestic terrorism. Can you speak to that?
We are treating this as a hate crime. As Special Agent in Charge Jones said, there's no indication that he's working with anyone else, and so we have charged it and are treating it as a hate crime, but continue to investigate.
And just to elaborate, the distinction of domestic terrorism would need to involve what?
The distinction between a hate crime and domestic terrorism is hate crime is where an individual is animated by a hatred or a certain animus toward a person of certain ethnicity or religious faith, and it becomes domestic terrorism where there is an ideology that person is then also trying to propagate through violence. And so we continue to see where that line is, but for now, at this place in our investigation, we're treating it as a hate crime and charging it as such.
So you say it was an AR-15 and what are the other weapons?
He had three Glock handguns with him.
The first 2 officers who confronted the suspect, could you clarify where that occurred? Was it outside the building? And have you determined whether or not the shooting inside he had done the shooting he was going to do, or there was potential for more shooting outside?
From what we know at this point, I know that he was exiting the building. I'm not sure if it was in the doorway or just inside or just outside. And your second question again?
Was whether or not there was an idea that that the shooting he had done inside was, he had included that, or
It appears at this point that he had finished and he was exiting the building.
And there was some reference to the possibility of additional shooting. Was that the idea that he had more ammunition? He's going somewhere else?
We don't know of any plans to conduct additional shootings. My comments were meant in this fashion. There would have been a violent encounter probably as he left at some point. That's what I mean by additional acts of violence.
What's the estimate on how many people were inside the synagogue at the time, and did anyone try to fight back?
Don't know that at this time.
Do you know what was going on inside the synagogue at the time? What kind of ceremony or?
I actually don't know the specifics. There are 3 congregations that meet in the same building. So I'm assuming all 3 were holding services, but I actually don't know for sure.
And do we know which community? Was this one specific congregation, the victims?
No, I think they come from, from what I know, they come from all 3.
So he moved throughout the building because they were holding services in different places in the temple, right?
I don't know this motivation of where he moved and why, but as has been said, he moved through the building and there were 3 separate congregations conducting services at the same time. Yes.
How long did this last? How long between the time he entered until the time police engaged him outside?
We're estimating at this point 20 minutes or so, but we don't know that for sure.
That's 20 minutes period between the police shootout and the initial attack, or 20 minutes for the initial?
All I can tell you at this point is that the initial shots fired comments were at 9:45. We know that that the EMS call went out at 9:54, and that the officer engaged him at some point after that. So that's a very rough estimate at this point.
Any idea why he went into this synagogue?
I don't know why he picked this particular synagogue.
Can you elaborate at all on the alleged shooter's condition at this point?
Do you know?
It's still, he remains in fair condition at Allegheny General Hospital with multiple gunshot wounds.
Will the families be able to bury the dead within 24 hours, which is customary by Jewish law, or will the investigation delay that?
We have representatives, rabbis at the office. We're doing everything we can to balance, as I say, what we need to do as a criminal investigation with the needs of the families. So we're just in the initial stages of processing the bodies and knowing we will make sure we can do everything we can to make sure that we can release the bodies in the shortest possible time frame, making sure that we get the information we need to carry on the criminal investigation.
Will there be funerals today?
Today, no. We hope to release the bodies. Some of the bodies will be released today. How many, I'm not sure.
Were shots fired at all 3 services, and do you have any handle on how many shots in all were fired?
Lots of shots were fired. There were casings everywhere, but no.
Were they in all 3 services, the 3 different services?
I'll have to refer to the investigation that's going on. There were different activities going on in different parts of the building, so yes.
Are investigators looking at any surveillance footage that may have been inside the synagogue?
Pardon me?
Sorry, any surveillance footage that's being reviewed right now?
We're attempting to see if there were surveillance cameras in position where we could capture footage, but we'll look at the neighborhood and try to find everything we can.
Robert, was there anyone armed inside who may have tried to confront the gunman?
I have no information that happened.
From what he said, were most of the shots fired within common areas, or did he actually go into chapel sanctuaries?
All we can tell you right now is that there were 3 different locations inside the facility where we found deceased victims.
Do we know how he obtained his firearms? Purchased them?
I personally don't have that information right now, but we're working closely with our ATF partners, and I think we have
Mr.
that.
Mayor, can I ask you a question? Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
In learning a lesson from this appalling tragedy, is it not time for the political classes to get together and talk about getting the gun out of American society?
I've heard the president's comments of how we should arm guards in our synagogues, our churches, our mosques. I've heard the conversation over the past year about how we should arm security guards in our schools. We're dealing with irrational behavior. There is no way that you can rationalize a person walking into a synagogue during services and taking the lives of 11 people. We shouldn't be trying to find ways to minimize the dangers that occur from irrational behavior. We should be working to eliminate irrational behavior and the empowerment of people who would seek to cause this type of carnage from continuing. I think the approach that we need to be looking at is how we take the guns, which is the common denominator of every mass shooting in America, out of the hands of those that are looking to express hatred through murder.
Last question.
Mr. Mayor,
Question for
what do you
Police
think
Chief
of,
Schubert. Sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, what do you think of the international attention that you're getting, and how do you think it's going to affect the midterm election?
I have no idea how it affects elections, but I will say this, that the outpouring of love and support for Pittsburgh is incredibly appreciated during this time. And there is a commonality throughout the world of people who have had enough of this type of hate based upon somebody's practice of religion or somebody's national origin. There is an outpouring that is being heard through the people of Pittsburgh right now of where people want to see society move towards. And it is not about finding ways to divide us. It is about finding ways that unite us through our commonality as humans. Let this horrific episode be another mark in the march of humanity towards recognizing that we are all one.
Thank you.
We've been watching a news conference with officials in Pittsburgh. They were updating us on their investigation into Saturday's massacre at a synagogue. We've got much more throughout the day here on CBSN at cbsnews.com. But for now, a quick break. We'll be right back.